Hi there, listener. We, the editorial team of a manufacturer, have the great privilege of bringing you interviews from some of the best manufacturers, leaders, industry analysts, young pioneers, innovators, and solution providers. But sadly, we can't possibly fit all of them into our podcast episodes. Fear not, though, because you're listening to Archives, a platform where you can hear these fascinating and thought-provoking interviews in full. In this episode, we catch up with Susan Brench, the CEO of Starbons. Starbons manufactures mesoporous carbons from bio-renewable biomass. We spoke with Susan following her involvement in SME Growth Summit last year to find out more about the company and its journey so far.
Hi, you're here in the manufacturer studio. I'm joined by Susan Brench, CEO of Starbons. Welcome to the manufacturer studio.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. What a buzz there is around this place.
Well, I was going to say, how are you enjoying the show so far? But you kind of answered that question. You're having a good time.
Yeah, it's interesting, really interesting. And I think post-COVID, so many people are kind of excited to be out talking to people again.
Definite buzz.
Definite buzz.
Starbons, I think, perhaps a new name for some of the readers of the manufacturer. So can you perhaps explain what you guys do and your role at the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So, CEO. I'm working together with a CTO. We are a micro startup company. Previously, it was a spin out of the University of York's Green Chemistry Centre of Excellence. A very small organisation. We're just scaling up from pilot scale to demonstration at the moment. And what we're doing is we're taking polysaccharides, so these would be things like starch or pectin or seaweed extracts, and we're making some rather interesting materials. I'll describe them as a solid sponge. They're able to capture or separate difficult mixtures to get things you want out of them. So it's a processing aid and an isolation media for different manufacturing processes.
Okay, so what would be a typical end application for what Starbons produce?
Well, one typical end application I can talk to you about, because we do a lot of the work we do is under confidential agreement, is that we have been working with a company in Leeds called RX Extraction to invent a novel way of extracting cannabinoids. And this process that has been invented in which Starbons is used as the isolation media enables the extraction to happen in one simple step rather than taking 3 or 4 conventional steps. So it's much less mass and energy intensive than traditionally, cannabinoid extraction would occur. So, in other words, pharmaceutical ingredients when you're trying to get the thing you want out of a complex mixture. And another example would be gas capture.
I see. Okay.
So, Starbons are very good materials for capturing carbon dioxide and also some of the more nasty things like ammonia. And we are working with a particular agency in this regard, but I can't talk about it because it's confidential.
Sure, no problem. And you gave a keynote today at SME Growth Summit around, I think the title was Separation Made Simple. Was that right?
Well, yeah, I think they took that from the strapline for the company. So we're doing separation using our products, right? So that's separation made simple. I have to say that the scale up hasn't been simple. So separation made simple applies to the fact that Starbons enable, in many cases, a more simple separation outcome than with conventional technology.
I see, sure. So, what were some of the key takeaways from your some of the highlights from your keynote today?
Well, what I described was the innovation journey that we'd come through. So we talked about scale up and actually some of the challenges around that, and what I would learn, some of the top tips. Certainly, taking a former university spin out to an independent entity can be somewhat complex. And some of the scale-up issues are really around the availability of assets and being able to replicate what you're doing in the laboratory on a larger scale and commercializing that idea. I guess one of the things that often gets missed with spin-outs from universities, frankly, is customer discovery.
Right.
You've got a very exciting, interesting technology, but is it something that a customer needs?
Yes, yeah. Not always perhaps at the forefront of
No,
the minds
indeed
when
not.
it's being developed.
No, indeed not. So what I talked about as well was the fact that when I came into the business, just after it had started trading, the people involved already were very excited about the range of markets that the materials could be used in. And I said, well, we have to focus down onto a couple of key markets. And so having that focus in order to commercialise effectively is really important as well.
Indeed. And you mentioned that innovation journey that Starbons have been on. Can you talk a little bit about around that in terms of where you guys started and where you are now and where you're looking to go to?
Yeah, absolutely. So Starbons comes from starch and carbonisation. So back in the early 2000s, the University of York academics, as I say, it was a spin out of University of York, were approached to find an end use for biomass, essentially, for waste materials. So materials often that would end up in landfill. And so they worked on various things and started with starch. I mean, we've since progressed on to other materials, pectin, that comes from citrus fruits.
Yeah.
And they scaled up the process for making these materials in the laboratory, patented them. Since that time, when the patents were put into effect, we've actually changed the process a little bit. We haven't patented those modifications so that we keep that confidential information. But we've, together working with the Bio-Renewables Development Centre, since becoming independent, we've been able to scale up from grams to kilograms. And so we're now at the next stage of our journey, which is to go past that scale into thousands of kilos and tons. And that's just where we are at the moment.
Fantastic. And in terms of sort of that journey, perhaps not the university scale up into company, perhaps not the traditional route for a manufacturing business. So what kind of challenges have you guys faced on that journey, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me because I've come out of industry. I spent 35 years in the chemical manufacturing sector, where we were helping to scale other people's processes. Those challenges have really been taking something that works in laboratory scale.
Yes.
And then translating that into something that's going to work at scale using equipment that is viable.
Yes.
Right? And the other challenge has been also, because we're using natural materials, they are inherently variable.
Right.
So you need to somehow find
Never
a way of having a constant output, and one that is, what a customer wants is something that is consistent.
Indeed. And I suppose for other SMEs out there that are looking or just about to embark on a similar journey, what kind of top tips would you have for those for taking that first step and beyond?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that really spring to mind are minimum viable product. Don't look for perfection. Look at what the customer really needs. What does the market really need? I mean, this is something I had to go backwards and do. And then, if you don't need to go to the nth degree, don't go to it. And just consider how is that technology scalable from a practical sense. And the other top tip is to collaborate. If you go alone, you'll go fast. I think there's a quote around this somewhere. But if you go together, you'll go far, right?
Yes, that's right,
And where we've made the biggest gains have been with working with engineering companies, with collaborating and networking with funding platforms or accelerator platforms, and meeting companies that can help us on our journey and not being afraid to ask for help.
Absolutely, yeah. It's amazing how often you hear the phrase collaboration is key.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
Yeah.
And just finally, Susan, just talking more broadly around the manufacturing landscape. This time tomorrow, whoever's in number 11 this week will have delivered another budget for us.
Crikey, yes.
What are you? Is there anything particular you're expecting, or is there anything particular that you're hoping for from a manufacturer's point of view?
What I would really like to see is that they maintain and enhance some of the schemes around R&D tax credits, that there is support for innovators, and I'm not suggesting that all startup companies that may have some rather bad ideas get funded, but they're good at picking some winners.
Yeah.
And the catapult centres, of which the CPI and AMRC, two examples. I've had good experience of working with them. If we saw the such partially government-funded schemes disappearing, I would be very disappointed to see that. And then, of course, there's around the taxation, pre-tax profits and all this sort of national insurance, all those kind of taxes. No, okay, corporation tax comes after you've made a profit, but when you're a startup, cash is so critical, and often you might be revenue generated, but you're not profit generating for many years.
No, sure.
So you really need to be able to help nascent organisations get through that period. I mean, I am my co-director. We've been bootstrapping the business for many years. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to come to the studio and speak to us, and I hope you have a great rest of Smart Factory Expo.
Thank you very much. Great opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed that, listener. Keep an ear out for more episodes like this one, and of course for more episodes of the Manufacturer Podcast. Whatever streaming site you're listening on, be it Spotify or Apple Music, be sure to give this podcast a follow and a rating. And if you're watching this on YouTube, why not subscribe to our channel for the latest video content?